when there's two sides to every coin. Then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks. And some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down and shut down the sundown. I said it's all just a game.
Jack, there we go, Jack. Am I on now? Is that me? Hi, yes. How are you? Hey, kids, welcome to a Friday edition of Just a Game. I would be me. You hopefully know who you are. We don't want to go through that ugly incident all over again. Welcome. The Nation Network, proud to be part of the Nation Network, which continues to expand. Our good friend Danny Austin now with a show. We'll talk about that a little later. Speaking of friends of the program, very excited. Darren Haynes from Canadian Press, formerly The Athletic, Flames from 80 feet, all-around good guy, was at the Stampeders game last night. Also, if you press him, likely has a opinion or two on the local hockey heroes and the other local hockey heroes spread across North America. The Stampeders opening up week one of the CFL. The commissioner was in the house, and it was him and about 13 or 14,000 of his friends. Having said that, we've been spoiled, haven't we? Like here in Calgary, when it comes to the CFL, you have to go back a long way. Now, I know what you're saying, Rob. You know, it was a little bit of a struggle last year, you know, for our friend Bo Levi. But in all fairness, you have to go back a long time. Henry Burris, Bo Levi Mitchell, we have been spoiled with top-end quarterbacks. And this is not an indictment on Jake Mayer. I will leave that to the Danny Austins of the world. But it wasn't good quarterbacking last night. It wasn't good offense last night. It was what we've seen in the past, which is a stout defense. Yes, they gave up 2 early touchdowns, but then they really kept Vernon Adams Jr. and the rest of the BC Lions in check, at least until the end. Probably a little bit of tired there, but just not happening on offense. Late touchdown in the fourth quarter perhaps made the game a little bit more interesting than it was. But again, week one, all of those sort of things, we can excuse it away. And, you know, what right do we have to demand great quarterbacking every single year from this franchise? Good question, but it wasn't fun to watch. And I hope for Dave Dickinson, and I like these guys. Like, I like this team. I like the guys running this team. Jay McNeil's now kind of taken over the off field, and you know, I really like Jay, and I'm excited for Jay. But there's some work to be done here. There's work to be done to get people back in the building. There's work to be done to get this offense going. And the nice thing, the one thing that when you put your head down on the pillow last night as a Stampeder fan, and you said, "Oh, that was not good," at least. Prior to the last 2 games, and the other game I'm talking about is the West semifinal last year in BC. Prior to the last 2 games, Jake was not the issue. The quarterback was not the issue. He's young. He's still evolving. He'll get there. He's got one of the best who's ever played the game in this league as his head coach. This is a good coaching staff. But we've been spoiled. We have been spoiled. Now, I would also defend that spoiling and the spoiledness, because you in particular, the person who purchases the ticket, the person who purchases the merchandise, the person who goes out and tailgates, the person who's this group of diehard fans, you were constantly smacked in the face with a week-old wet halibut by previous owners. I think back to the Michael Federick, Kevin Federick, Fateri days. I think back to the illusion or that 1 year that was Matt Dunnigan as the head coach. That pains me to say because one of my dearest friends in the whole world was the president of that team that year. And unfortunately, he still has to wear a little bit of that too. But then the changes came. And then Henry Burris came. And then Huffnagel came. And Jim Barker was there. And Tom Higgins played a part in this. And there was this restoration of this franchise. And it became a going concern. It became the class of the league. It became the team in the West that always had the Western Conference final home field advantage. It beat the crap out of the Elks. I refuse, just out of good grammar. And I'm the wrong person. I am the wrong person to stand up for good grammar. But in this case, I refuse to refer to them as the Elk. They are the Elks. That is plural. Elk is a single animal. Beat the hell out of the Elks year after year after year in Labor Day. And then Bo Levi Mitchell came in. And all he did was set a record for wins to start a career. And all he did was set records in what was an already impressive history and record book for the Calgary Stampeders. And somewhere along the line, the media, of which I can be part of, and I think to a certain extent the fan base got complacent. We got fat and sassy. Well, me. I got fat and sassy. And you begin to expect it, and you begin to take it for granted, and you begin. And guess what? It ain't that anymore. And it hasn't been for a while now. But last night, speaking of week-old wet halibuts, that one smacked you across the face as a Stampeder fan. It did. It stinks. It stings. It wasn't great. It's week one. Do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Please, I implore you, on Monday, listen to Live from the 55 because there is an expert, Danny Austin. He will give you his take. I am just drawing some opinions. I am just pointing to things more from a historical standpoint. Spoiled, spoiled, spoiled. Now, I will entertain and certainly give the floor over to someone who wishes to maintain that, yes, those were good years, but there was not enough Grey Cups mixed in there. Yes, absolutely. I concur. For how good that team was, the talent of that team, the quality of the coaching, all of those sort of things, I do not believe there are enough Grey Cup rings for what should have been. The number of times this team went to Toronto and Toronto backed into the postseason and the Argonauts find that we don't even have to go there. You know what I'm saying? So 25-15, week one, Ottawa next week. Again, early in the season, it does beg the question from an outsider, from a 30,000 point view. I have long held this belief that I don't know what the perfect number is. I don't know what the perfect time frame is. I think it varies. But in a conversation with Don Matthews once, he told me, you really don't know what you have in the CFL until week 4. Tom Higgins would have a similar conversation like that with the media. I don't know about Dave. I don't want to put words into Dave's mouth. 2 preseason games. It seems from an outsider that we've moved further and further and further away from starters playing meaningful reps. Now, because of the nature of the sport, it being a collision sport, it being a high-risk sport, I'm not saying and suggesting that, that needs to change or we need to play more preseason games. Nobody wants that. But I think if you're realistic and a day after the first game is not when you throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not when you fire the coach. It's not when you burn your jersey. It's none of those sort of things. It just stunk last night. That's all. Looking in the crowd, you'd like to see more people there. Looking on the field, you'd like to see more completed passes. You'd like to see these offensive weapons engaged. The defense did its job as far as I'm concerned. Credit to the BC Lions, who go from Nathan Rourke to Vernon Adams Jr., and that is not a straight line. And that's not a knock against Vernon Adams Jr., who's an excellent, very good, capable CFL quarterback right now. But that offense is good. They have weapons. They're talented. The one area that I think, and we've had this conversation with Danny before, and far be it for me to contradict Dave Dickinson, because I know in his post-game scrum, he said he wasn't satisfied with all three facets of his team's play. But I didn't see too many problems with special teams. I'm no football coach, and I'm no head coach or anything like that, but I didn't see too many problems with the special teams. Mark Killam and his crew continue to do great work, and that guy destined to be a head coach very, 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 very soon. All right. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, they decided to fire up the Stanley Cup playoffs. It looked like Vegas was just going to be on a different plateau, but there's Matthew Tkachuk again. 1-0 lead nursed by the Panthers. Couple of goals by the Knights. They've got a 2-1 lead, a couple minutes to go in the game. And who's all alone scoring the game-tying goal, making the play? Yep, you know it, Matthew Tkachuk. 19 games, 24 points, plus 12. I will, if somebody offers me the flotation device of, well, you weren't in the media and you weren't paying as close attention, I'll take it. But I was schooled a couple of weeks ago by Craig Button, because in my infinite wisdom, I was suggesting that something had happened. There was some transition between this playoffs version of Matt Tkachuk and last year's playoffs version of Matt Tkachuk. And there was. He's healthy. And I owe everybody an apology for even bringing that up, because Craig was right. He had the hand injury. He could not play to the game and the level he wanted. So let me just say, this healthy Matt Tkachuk last year for Calgary would have made a difference. And I would say, would he have won the series against Edmonton? Maybe. But he is a lot of fun to watch. I certainly hold no grudge towards him. I know some do, and those sort of things. But in a way, I think you make that case. And he got rocked. Like, he got rocked. The concussion spotters pulled him out. So it was a minor miracle he got back into that game to begin with, and he got back in and he made an impact. But game after Jack, and let's talk about Jack Eichel here in a second. Jack Eichel throwing the body. Jack Eichel got rocked. Jack Eichel comes back. Jack Eichel makes big hit. I'm forgetting words now. I'm going back to prehistoric talk. I just recently, I don't know if you had the chance to share whatever your version of Saturday Night Live is, but mine's the Phil Hartman era, and I just recently was able to share with my son Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer, which I just think is brilliant. So sometimes I'm just a simple caveman. Your planes frighten me. But you know what? To me, I think Matt Tkachuk, he did Superman last night. Get on my back. Bobrovsky was good. Like, hey, listen, Bobrovsky got yanked, should have been yanked in the first, got yanked in the second. He got the net back, and I know there's kind of, wow, why would they give it back to him? He was good last night. But Tkachuk was on another level. Okay, so let's talk about Jack Eichel. And I'll say this. I'll preface this by saying I have no love for the Vegas Golden Knights. None whatsoever. None. I do like their GM, Kelly McCrimmon. He's a nice guy. And Kelly Kissio, former coach and manager and president of the Calgary Hitmen, he's on their staff, and Kelly's a good guy. But anyway, my whole thing is they got this incredible opportunity that no other expansion team, including Seattle, got. They've taken full advantage of it. They're having watched the Columbuses and Nashvilles and Anaheims and Atlantas wander through the desert aimlessly for years without superstars and without success, to watch this team in its second Stanley Cup final in 6 years and to be the better team. Let's be perfectly honest. They're the better team right now, and leading 2-1. Jack Eichel. Kevin Weeks last year put out a post that the Flames had dangled Matt Tkachuk and other pieces to Buffalo for Jack Eichel. I never fully got confirmation of this, but I was under the belief that that was not necessarily the case. But it also immediately led to Vegas upping the ante, putting Peyton Krebs into the deal, and Buffalo got what they wanted. I always felt like the Flames were used in that situation. I don't think that Buffalo really was ever, and I'm not in the room, never talked to anybody about this. I'm just, my gut on this was it sure felt like they leaked some information to Kevin Weeks. Kevin Weeks went with it, and that was what they wanted because that forced Vegas back. At least when I put my head down on the pillow, I can go to sleep at night thinking that that's how it all went down. But Jack Eichel never tasted the playoffs in Buffalo. Jack Eichel became this pariah in Buffalo because he didn't want to do what their doctors wanted. He wanted to do what he and his doctors felt. He always had the unenviable position of being the other guy in the Connor McDavid draft. If they were separated by 9 months and just enough, 6 months, whatever it would take to push them into two separate drafts, there would have been fail for Eichel or suck for Eichel, whatever we would have come up with. Jack, work on that for me. Come up with a slogan for that. I don't know what the right thing is. But he would have been an amazing first overall pick. Injuries, Buffalo, all of those sort of things. And then he goes to Vegas and he's hurt when he gets there. And he kind of gets back on his feet last year. Jack Eichel has been terrific in this postseason. Jack Eichel is everything that the number 2 in the McDavid draft should be. He passes the puck exceptionally well. He does not mind getting physical. Yes, he got rocked by Tkachuk, had to leave, came back. Rocked a guy last night. Jack Eichel's a superstar. Like, he is a superstar. Now, the goofing around, whatever you want to call it, the second guessing, the chomping and all that stuff, whatever. Never got out of the gate in Buffalo, was injured for a couple. That's likely going to cost him career numbers that would put him into those conversations. But if I was starting an NHL club today and I had the 4th or 5th pick, how about I go with 5th pick? If I had the 5th pick and I was starting an NHL club today, you'd have to think McDavid goes 1. I think Draisaitl goes 2. I think then Cale Makar or Austin Matthews or Matt Tkachuk goes 3. So my point being is I would be ecstatic if I was the 5th overall team in this brand new draft and I got to pick Jack Eichel. I would be. Is it 1 year? Is it one playoff? Yeah. But he comes with the pedigree and he's playing to the level that we all expected him to play to. The two teams will meet in a couple of days here. It felt more like survival last night for Florida than them clawing themselves back into this series. We've had those 5-game eliminations and stuff like that where what was the term I heard yesterday? Jack, have you heard this term? A gentleman's sweep. I have never heard that one before.
I have, yeah.
5 games, right?
Yeah.
That's a gentleman's sweep.
Gentleman's sweep.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I thought that was brilliant. And I think it very well could be a gentleman's sweep here. A little closer to home, but Rob, why didn't you start with this? Well, we can. Certainly the boys on the barn burner were all over it. Elliot Friedman got everybody's attention yesterday during the game. His report was that Ryan Huska, Flames assistant coach, is the leading candidate Did not say it was imminent. Didn't say it was going to happen for sure. Just when Elliott speaks, everybody pays attention. And immediately everybody kicked into overdrive and went right to, okay, so he's the coach. Now what do we do? Ryan Huska apparently is Craig Conroy's, Dave Nonus's, Brad Pascal, Chris Snow's, that hockey department, Maloney. That's supposedly, according to Elliott Friedman, the guy. He has, and trust me, if you listen to me try to pick series winners, I am not in a position to ever say to you, see, I told you so. My prediction ability is well, really, it's measured in the fourth grade. That's where I make predictions. But it was Huska and Conroy for me. It was right from the get-go. We talked a little bit about this before. Okay, Rob, but then what about Mitch Love? If you give Huska the job, you'll lose Mitch Love. Yep, that's possible. Very possible. Maybe add him to the staff. I don't know. But you can't, and there's a little bit of a lesson with Craig Conroy here. You know, Craig Conroy got an interview in Buffalo. And, you know, I believe that's when Kevin Adams got the job. I think. I might be wrong on that, actually. But anyway, that's the previous interview that was public for Craig was with Buffalo. You know, at that point, that kind of, to me, sends a, recognition from other people outside your organization that this person is valued, that this person is, warrants a conversation. Ryan Huska had that same opportunity with Detroit. I don't believe that Stevie Yzerman necessarily just does things on the whim. I think he's very informed, very calculated. Ryan Huska was clearly somebody that they were looking at. Now, he didn't get the job in Detroit. That goes without saying. He is a longtime coach, 20 years, Western League, American League, NHL. He just feels like the right choice and has felt like the right choice to me. It's that shiny toy thing. Meanwhile, all Mitch Love did was win back-to-back American Hockey League Coach of the Year. All Mitch Love did was, develop a cadre of young players that the Calgary Flames now have to make decisions on. Ryan Huska did similar things, in Adirondack and Stockton. I would not have been surprised and still would not be surprised. I guess I got to go back and say that still wouldn't be surprised that, again, Friedman did not say it was a done deal. He said that's where they were leaning. Would not be surprised if, Mitch Love, if it goes back and forth. I am certainly not surprised the Calgary Flames are not going with a bigger name. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound like a slight against Craig Conroy or a slight against the organization. It's not intended to be. They're paying Daryl Sutter $4 million a year the next 2 years not to coach. You've already invested. This is not the time to open up the bank for Gerard Gallant, who, by the way, just left the Rangers because the players didn't get along with their coach. This is young coach time. This is the right time. A young GM who gets to pick his first coach. Ryan Huska, I think we've got his board. I apologize, Jack. You probably threw it up there, but I was, babbling on this topic. But Ryan Huska has, to me, is kind of Craig Conroy in coaching. He's done it all. Played in the league, assistant, head coach, won a championship. He missed the playoffs in 3 years and only in the American Hockey League. It's less to do with, certainly Mitch Love, had great success, but it's about the development. So go back and look at those Adirondack and Stockton teams and who got developed and who got up here, that type of thing. And then has been certainly a coach that's seen a lot, being part of Peters, Ward, Sutter's staff. We'll see. I like it, but I don't get a vote. I like it, but I don't get a vote. And again, all due respect to Elliott Friedman, we all believe this is going to happen, but it's still got to happen. You know what's happening tomorrow in Vancouver? You do, don't you? It's UFC 289. Tomorrow, pay-per-view, or your favorite UFC endorsed location to go watch it. It is headlined by Amanda Nunes and Donna, I should say. 6 Canadians on the undercard. It's the first time in 4 years, pandemic, all of those sort of things, but the first time in 4 years that the UFC finds itself north of the border. It's finally here. It's tomorrow night. The weigh-ins are taking place today. Do not miss it. It's going to be a great, great card. Darren Haynes coming up in just a couple of minutes. A couple other things before we get to Darren. Locally, the 3-1 Calgary Surge in action against the 3-1 Ottawa Blackjacks tonight, 7:00 over at Winsport. We had head coach Nelson Taroba on Wednesday. I loved that conversation. Got a little into his process. It's funny. Here we are talking about the stamps in early season and preseason. There was no preseason for any of the CEBL teams. So I would almost say this is the third home game. I'm really excited to see what it's going to look like. I'm really going to, I think both teams are going to come in much more polished, a week of practice, a little bit of a sting, I would say, for the Surge as they lost in Vancouver last Saturday night. But it's going to be a good one. Make sure you're down there early, the plaza out in front of Winsport. All kinds of great opportunities. Our friends from Meals from Wheels are there. There's merch. There's a beer garden. Zeno's there. There's all kinds. There's basketball nets provided by Kids Sport. It's a great opportunity. So if you're kicking off from work or if you're taking, oh, by the way, you may want to bring a Sharpie with you tonight. Because my understanding is, and Jack backed me up on this, but I believe one Ryan Pinder is attending the game.
He is in attendance.
Okay.
Sadly for everyone there.
So bring a Sharpie if you're looking for autographs, right?
Yep.
Other friend of the program, JD Lewis, and actually we should have JD on. Talk about the UFC card, our UFC insider. JD Lewis is going to be there tonight. So lots of the who's who of Calgary is coming to the game. As a matter of fact, they're so excited they're calling me right now. But yeah,
I thought that was me.
No. I'm getting a phone call. Where's Rob? Well, he's doing his podcast. Well, let's call him. That's how it works. Anywho, that's 7:00 tonight. Denver in Miami tonight. I don't know what to say about Jokic and Murray, and my thinking is they go up 3-1 on Miami, but we'll wait and see. Miami's at home in this one, but boy, Denver looks good. And I don't think Denver's going away anytime soon. Having said all of that, they're calling me back. Well, I wonder why he didn't pick up the first time. Maybe it's because he's on the air. So you guys don't mind if I do this, eh?
Just answer and throw it on speaker.
No, I would never do that. I'm just going to say, what time are we going to be? Oh, I'll just say call when I'm off, right? It's a good thing because there used to be a time when if that happened, I'd have to pay a fine. But I just think it's so prevalent now that how could you do that, right? I took at least I had the common sense to turn the ringer off, right? So it's not doing that.
I think we need to bring that back, like a swear jar or something every time.
Somebody's phone
goes off.
Yeah,
$1.
Because it was DeHatchik last week, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, he didn't pick up. We must call him back. Like, if I call you, okay,
yeah,
that's good enough, right? Like, I don't have to leave a message. I don't have to text you. If I call you, you see it, to call.
I know to call you back. Okay. That's how it usually works.
Okay.
But
if I call you twice, it must be important.
Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned that this is very important.
Yeah. If I get 3 phone calls from my mom, then
right.
Back to back to back.
Back to back to back to back. Toronto over Houston last night in Major League Baseball. Minnesota's in Toronto tonight. Probably the big story there is we're all kind of watching the fallout from Alex Manoah. He's down in Dunedin now, likely 2 rotations that he's going to be out. See if he can find his stuff. And that you never know. Scheduled Monday and Wednesday next week is Danny Austin. And I say scheduled if if the Flames follow through and hire a coach on Monday, it's possible that yours truly may have to give up his other plans and come back and do his own show. The audacity of people, like, honest to God. I mean, come on now, Danny. But anyway, Danny, at least next Monday and Wednesday is supposed to be in. But next Friday, a week from today, you might want to put it in your Google Calendar. You might want to ask Alexa to play this one. Peter Marr and Eric Dahachuk, same show. Eric Dahachuk, Peter Marr, same show. Don't know. I think the Stanley Cup final might be over by then, but certainly we saw it today with the trade. I mean, Columbus has been real busy. They acquired Damon Severson from New Jersey for a third-round pick that, funny enough, used to be the local Hockey Heroes pick, but got to Columbus via Seattle. And the other connection to Calgary is this becomes the second sign and trade deal in the NHL after last year's Matthew Tkachuk. So Jersey gets a third-round pick, but they do a little tidy business as they sign Severson to the 8-year deal, which he could not get with Columbus and now gets. And in the span of a couple of days, Jarmo Kukalainen has picked up Provorov from Philadelphia and now Severson. They have Werenski. It feels a little like Calgary. Like, we should probably rebuild, but we've got Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine here. Maybe we can't. Maybe we can't. Our next guest might actually have an opinion on that, or maybe he won't. I don't know. He is, of course, brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard. SkiCellarSnowboard.com. 76 years in Calgary, almost as many years in Calgary as our next guest. 4 locations during the winter, just 1 in the summertime. That's McLeod Trail by Chinook Center. But now is the time to go in and start drooling. If you're like me and your winter or fall activities are what's keeping you, going, that's what you're really kind of glomming on. I cannot wait to get back on the slopes. Then why don't you go down and drool? Take a look at the equipment, take a look at the skis, take a look at the snowboards, plan what your next investment is, talk to the folks down there, get going, because before you know it, the snow will be back. Of course, Ski Cellar Snowboard, SkiCellarSnowboard.com. You know him, you love him, is the commissioner of the world famous 7HL, also works for Canadian Press, used to work for The Athletic, friend to all, friend to pets. Darren Haynes joins us this afternoon on Just a Game. I sure hope you can hear me, because you have not moved an inch, nor have your emotions haven't changed. So I'm a little concerned that maybe my grandiose introduction for you just didn't land.
I was more nervous about you talking about the snow coming.
Well, it's inevitable,
geez,
right?
Happy Friday, Rob.
No, but I'm just saying, like, nobody can run and hide from the fact that winter will come next in the fall. That's the way it works, right?
Yeah. Look at beard. What's going on there? You got the Patrick Waugh thing going.
Well, I'd like to think that the Patrick Waugh had the Rob Kerr thing going, but okay, we'll go your route. It's mostly just laziness. I would suggest it's just, I get up in the morning. It's a lot of work to brush my teeth, and it ends there. Personal grooming is never, personal grooming has never been a strength. May have cost me my TV career, actually.
Different topic for a different day.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which topics would you like to begin with?
I wasn't sure actually when you were giving me that grandiose entrance, whether I was on camera or what. So I was just trying to just lay in the background, just kind of lurk and
I think anytime I begin to talk about you in any situation, you should always feel like there's a live mic close by. I just think that that's the way you should approach your conversations with me.
Fair enough.
You were in the house last night for BC's 25-15 victory over Calgary. You have been in the house for a lot of these, so let's start here. One game a season does not make, and all of those sort of things, but sitting back and watching it last night, it felt like getting slapped across the face. Like, oh man, the offense couldn't do anything. The defense is stout. I'll give them that. There's a little life in the fourth quarter, but it just had almost a helpless feel to it last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you got to be wary of the fact that there's 2 preseason games in the CFL, and there's good sides of that and there's bad sides. And I'm a big promoter of less preseason anything. So I like that, but I think you also what you get with that is sometimes you do have some slop early in the season, and certainly you saw some of that. Maybe you saw less of that from BC, so maybe I'm just making something up over here. But I really think that they just looked a little rusty. They looked disconnected. Offensively, I mean, it certainly set the tone when Rene Paredes comes out and misses his first 2 field goals, and well within his automatic range, right? So that was a bit of a dubious start, and until they decided to go without a huddle and just hurry it up, they really couldn't get anything going offensively. And but it's so early, and and certainly credit to BC, they marched the field their first couple of drives, and old Vernon Adams looked amazing. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm concerned about how few people saw it. That's maybe my one takeaway from that game. That was the stat that popped was the lack of people in the pews, if you will.
Well, yeah. And you weren't the only one, because our pal Danny Austin, of the host of Live from 55, official attendance at McMahon, 17,942. That has to be tickets out. I don't think that would have been bums and seats. It looked 13 or 14-ish to me.
Yeah,
you were there.
It's I think it's fair, and especially for us of our vintage. Rob, I'll drag you into my pit of age. But,
yes.
You're worried. You do need to be worried about our CFL, right? Because
I am.
I've observed over the years, and I've been going to McMahon. This is my 39th year doing the stats of the press box. It's crazy to think that I've been doing that for 4 full decades.
Since you were 6 years old? That's incredible.
Let's go with that. Anyway, and you see, and what I love about it, you make that drive down University Drive to the stadium, and you see the red, the pageantry, the jerseys, the old jerseys, the hats. There's so much really diehard fans. But they're all older, for the most part. It's just an audience and a crowd that's gotten a little bit older. In fact, I believe scientifically they've gotten 1 year older every year. So that they need to get into some younger demographics, and it's just so much has changed. I don't go back to when I was a CFL fan, listening to Eric Bishop do games on the radio. Who's listening to CFL games on the radio? But that was this guy. I'd go out, I go camping, and as I was an only child, so I'd be out there, and as long as I had my football and I had a kicking tee, I was good for the whole Saturday, right? Because whether I was kicking field goals over the cookhouse or whether I was cooking them over the little grove of trees.
Yep.
But I love my CFL, and so. But there's just so many less things to do back then, and so many more things to do right now. So I think that's a big part of it. There's other factors, obviously. There's the comfort. It's so easy to stay at home now. The beers are cheaper. The parking's free. The seats are wonderful, right? The HD replays are right there. And if you have short attention spans, if you're on your couch, you probably saw some of the hockey game last night. You didn't if you're at McMahon, right? So you're competing. You're competing with stuff all the time. So, there's a lot of things. So, I hope that, just to give you a little bit of a backstory, we have a new stat system that's being implemented this year, and it's been a bit of a battle. It's a new system, but with an end goal of being able to do a lot more with it. And one of the things is fantasy football. Yeah. And I hope that they can get a good quality fantasy football product out, because I'll use myself as an example. I became an NFL fan based on fantasy football. I was always a CFL guy. I got into a pool. Who's your favorite team? Whoever my guys play for. But then that's how I started following the players, followed the teams, and now I watch NFL every Sunday. So I feel like there's opportunity there, but I'm a little bit nervous.
No, and fair. What's frustrating to me about my CFL journey is it felt like the first half of it was whether or not the league would see the light of day at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
And
sure.
and this with your experience in the media. Covering the CFL is such a different experience than covering the NHL or any other sport, because the people that cover it love it. I've always loved it. and are big fans of the game, not the teams. I'm not saying they're cheerleaders, but they want it to be successful. Nobody wanted it, but it just, the whole American experience and the Barracudas and the gold miners and all of that. And, and David Braley owning 2 teams. And it just seemed like for the longest time, it was whether or not this league would survive financially. Now it's the last 2 decades have been, geez, they need a video game. Now they need fantasy. Now they need young fans. That's my frustration. It just feels like we're doing the same thing. We're having the same conversation year after year and nobody's making any headway. I'm sorry. And I'm very adamant about this. This building is not good, period. End of story. That is not a knock against the people who run it. That's not a knock against Ziad and his staff that do the food and beverage there. It's not a knock against JK and the ticketing staff. It's not a knock against Gibby and the retail staff. They are buying industrial strength and size lipstick for this swine. They really, 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 really are. But it's a terrible building and nobody ever talks about an option. Nobody ever talks about a replacement. And I feel almost resigned to the fact that I'm watching this slip away. I don't want to say I don't want it to slip away, but I'm watching it slip away.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned a lot of things there. And we've always kind of, I know I've always kind of called them, that's part of the charm of the CFL, right? Those quirks, right? We've got American teams, and you know what? Just have American players. You try that, and we'll see how we can compete. Like it's been a road. Like it's really been a road. But you like to think that like it's just there's so much tradition there that it will prevail. You just want to make it just work, but yeah, they certainly they're using I get there's so many different avenues they've taken to try and grow the game, and some probably were mistakes, and others it wasn't that long ago you're hearing about mergers and stuff like that, which what does that do, right? So yeah, so where are we headed? Anyway, I hear what you're saying.
It's like nobody in this city is a bigger Jay McNeil fan than me. Loved the guy, loved him when he played, loved him when he was, in the alumni, loved him when he played. He played in our charity hockey game against the cast and crew of Heartland. I just love Jay McNeil. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a bright guy. I think he's a passionate guy. I think he's the right guy for this job. But I would be scared if somebody asked me, what do you do? How do you fix this? Because I don't have an answer. And I usually have answers. They're mostly bullshit. Sorry, Ty. But I have answers. I don't have an answer. I just don't. I love, but we used to be able to wrap ourselves in the cloth of, wow, it's a better game than the NFL. It's more exciting than the NFL. Is it? Was last night more exciting than any NFL game you saw?
Yeah, and here's another, topical reference is, are the games too long? Like is because they're grinding out at 3 hours. Baseball's shaved a half hour off their game and have kind of reinvented themselves as a 220, you know what I mean? Like
I do exact. I never understood that. Like it always struck me on the outside looking in. Why, if I'm paying this amount of money, make it last. But I do, now that I've worked inside the business, it's about giving the efficient product, get in, get your beers, watch your exciting action and go home. That's what it is. And dragging it out, to your point, dragging it out. And a Thursday, that's the one thing we should know. It's not, we're not that far removed from the season beginning on Canada Day. There's still kids in school right now.
Yeah. I know Thursday wasn't great for sure. But it's also the season opener, right? Like you kind of expect there should
used to be a sellout.
There used to be a bump, right? So the dates now that I think about the Rough Riders coming in about a month or so. I believe they're here for a home game. We obviously have the Eskimos on Labor Day, and Labor Day was always that sellout you can count on. That stopped being a sellout you can count on. So what does that look like now? What's that attendance look like? So when you start off at 17 and I'll call it 17, even though it was probably less, because you could always say it was probably less with all the other numbers historically. So apples to apples, I think 17 is a fair number, but it wasn't 22. It wasn't 24. It was 17. And so is the next one going to be 15? Like where do we go from there, right? So yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, a little bit nervous about how that's going to turn out.
And you and I both can speak to this. One of the things that we never talk about, this is a new form of media, but this is micro broadcasting. When I had a radio show, that was broadcasting. Like that was a big audience. This is now people choose to listen to me because they like me. So hi, Mom. Glad you're listening again today. And about 4 other people. Having said that, the elimination of dinner time sports, the elimination of late night sports, the elimination of newspapers, the elimination of true, radio, all of that also plays a role in this, because I don't know these players. Do you know these players? And you knew Henry Burris, you knew Nick Lewis, you knew Jermaine Copeland, you knew, Joffrey Reynolds, you knew, like, it's not that long ago where those guys had profile in this city. But with the elimination of the traditional media model, that's gone away too.
Sure. Yeah, you don't, instead of at Stamps practice, you have a Sun guy, you have a Herald guy, you might have a columnist from one of those two. That's 3 writers. You have local news. Yeah, it's shrunk, and I love the fact that Danny Austin's got a platform now, and he nobody knows the Stampeders better than Danny, right? But so hopefully that will grow, and that can kind of just a little bit of a ripple effect from that. We can get more people engaged and whatnot. Those are good signs. You just hope that they can kind of be that spark that will help grow interest, whatever that interest, however you can do it. They just need to get more people engaged and get people watching this game.
You are very good at telling me when I'm wrong or out of line on something. A lot was made the last couple of weeks and even last night about CFL's on CBS. Oh, like it's a big deal. CBS added their logo bug to the TSN broadcast down south. Oh my God, they're actually putting their name on it now. I find that to be such a lost leader. I don't care. I just don't see any scenario in which getting this game into the homes in the States is ever going to keep it. As Arash Madani said, in between the channel it was on, in between the commercial breaks, they were showing or promoting cornhole coming up. So it strikes me as, very frustrating that it seems like we get so excited about the Americans might like it. The Americans might like it. You got to worry about the Canadians liking it.
Yeah, for sure. That's just an easier way to get it into the homes of the parents. Of the 35 imports.
Right.
And see, that's how old I am. I'm still calling them imports, Rob.
And again, I do we have to say it? Both of us love this league. This is not sitting here Monday morning quarterbacking it or bitching it and saying the Stamps are doing something wrong, the CFL's doing something wrong. It's a little bit like, global warming in a way. It almost feels like it's there, but I can't really control it. How can I, an individual, control this? Right? Like it's going on. It just keeps coming. And I just want to wake up in the middle of the night sweating, going, I've got it. Here's the solution. We can fix the CFL so it can come back, because my history of the CFL has always been crisis. It's always been in a crisis. This team, like, people don't want to, I laugh because Regina's, this juggernaut, right? I worked in Estevan, Saskatchewan. One of my jobs my first year was to go up and be part of a radio telethon to keep that team alive. So don't tell me that, they've always been this juggernaut. You and I are both of the same age. We remember 50,000 people in Commonwealth on the Friday after Labor Day, right? Because the kids all got the free tickets and stuff like that. Like, that's in our lifetime. And it just seems a million miles away right now.
Yeah. And where else can you do a pulse check of where the strength of the CFL is? I always point to Saskatchewan as kind of the like Saskatchewan, where it will always be great and a hot ticket and always all of that. Well, I even have relations now in Saskatchewan that are no longer going into Regina for the games, that are more watching NFL games on the weekends than CFL games. So if you, my God, start to lose some of that hardcore Rough Rider crowd. Now we've got a real issue because, those guys should have always been the ones you have. So that again makes me a little bit nervous of what comes of that now. So certainly lots of work to do.
Do you mind one out of the box ridiculous thing that I will be labeled with for the rest of my life because I had the audacity to bring it up question?
Oh, I live for this every day. So hit me.
What if you built a 12,000 seat stadium? What if you built a 12,000 seat stadium? Because that would be a threshold in which it would be full and there'd be demand. Because it's one thing to fill a building, but you still want to have demand, right? Like you still want to have scalpers and you still want to have that secondary market. Is the size of an outdoor facility and an outdoor crowd for this league, the expectation is what it used to be? Should it be? Could this league operate? It'd be a higher ticket level, slightly higher ticket level, in a 12,000 seat venue, modern venue with all the amenities, with a sports book, with restaurants, with enough washrooms and everything like that. Could it work? Or do we still need to scratch, claw, and try and get back to 30,000 a game? I understand economics. I understand all of that. But is the fact that outdoor sports might be shrinking, I can't say that because soccer's growing, but you know what I'm trying to say here, Darren?
Yeah. Where does the gate? What with the CFL? How important is that gate? Like, that's the first thing you got to figure out, right? Is that are you, if you're taking, like, even if we were to say there was 15,000 there last night, it's still on a Thursday. If you're already down 3,000 head count,
right? But there's student zone tickets and there's other tickets, so there's a whole bunch of discounted tickets, right, in the marketplace, and there might be. For the most part, CSEC really does not do a lot of papering. I know that to be a fact. So I think that's legit, but there's lots of deals, right? Like there's lots of deals out there.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. It's the same concept of trying to kind of make the seats that you have worth more, right? I remember them covering up the nosebleed seats in the Saddledome for a while there, trying to kind of build up the value of those that had tickets. Like that happens. That's a thing that happens, and I can see, I can see and it's certainly more practical to build something like that. Like what would be the appetite to build a 50,000 seat stadium, 40,000 seat stadium based on it doesn't make any sense, right? So
unless you have certain events right now in the world that, the Olympics, soccer, there are certain sports that can fill those venues, right? In Canada, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But you are hard. Yeah. I don't care who you are. You're hard pressed to tell me outside of brand new buildings in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, you're hard pressed to tell me that you can draw more than 20,000 on an early season CFL game. And there's still lots of seats and there's still lots of inventory. Would you be better off creating a demand for inventory?
Yeah, and it's that incremental cost. Like, do you want to go through that huge incremental cost to be able to be on the list to potentially get a World Cup qualifier or whatever that might be, or do you just kind of build your 12,000 seat and this is the Stamps house? Make it that's their place, and so I don't think it was as terrible an idea as you thought it might be.
No, well, just because it's almost heresy at some points, right? Like, I remember when it was heresy for people to say, well, I'm not going to go to a playoff game because it might snow. What do you mean? That's when you put the fur coat on. That's when we put the Mickey in the bottle. That's when we've got this car battery that we hook up to this seat and it keeps your ass warm. There used to be this challenge of, sure. You mean it's snowing? Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah.
And we're not that society anymore. Good, bad, or indifferent. We're not that society anymore.
No, we know in this city that when the going gets rough, weather-wise or conditions around you, sometimes that doesn't make you tougher. That the opposite happens. So
right.
Yeah,
right.
I'm with you.
No, I don't have much to add other than it was one game. I'm like you. I'm worried, but happy that a guy like Jay McNeil's on the job. And, I hope Jay can, knowing Jay, if he has to go knock on everybody's door in the city and do it that way, he'll do it. So let's give him a little bit of work, but things aren't looking really good in Edmonton right now. And it's a struggle, my friend. I don't want it to be, but it is. Yep. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, when last we spoke, I don't believe that the Calgary Flames had a general manager. They subsequently have found one. Everybody's had a crack at it. You've written about it. You've tweeted about it. I did find it somewhat amusing last week that they chose not to qualify 5 drafted players from a couple years ago. And as you rightfully pointed out, people started to get on Conroy's case over that was the true litmus test of his new job title, is that he didn't qualify 5 kids out of the draft.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's probably some that more so, like it's easy. I think there's so much frustration right now around this hockey team still lingering, that any opportunity to pile on is taken. You go back to that draft. The thing is if you have 5 players that they didn't qualify, well, they didn't qualify them for a reason, right? Like, this isn't a team in the market of throwing back guys they think will be stars, right? Like, why? There's no motivation to do that, right? So if you legitimately don't think that there is futures in these players, then why go through the exercise? Why tie up a spot in the dressing room in the AHL, a spot, one of your contracts for the next 3 years, right? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, one of the big, I'll give you a parallel example. How the college players, you have these kind of college signings that happen kind of after the college season ends, right? And these are always these in-demand players, and Calgary's won the bidding war a few times on some of these guys. And we sometimes forget that they also weren't drafted originally. So this is kind of like the best of what's out there and still free, right? Yep. So it doesn't mean they're great stars. It's just they're the best of what's out there and don't belong to anyone. Yep. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, so sometimes these guys will think they're really getting away with something, and their agent has worked some magic when they get that whole, this guy finished his 4 years at Ohio State or Minnesota or wherever, and they're 23 years old, and they're going to, and they've agreed to sign if Calgary will burn that first year of their contract. And because of their age, often it's a 2-year entry-level contract, right? So they'll burn that first year. I think the team is well disguised that, oh no, okay, you win, we'll cave into that. But secretly, they love it, because players that age, they know they only need a year to know whether there's a future there, and they hate having those guys around for 2 years if they already know after one or after half a season that he just doesn't have NHL in his future, right? So I think back, and I take that parallel back to those draft picks. If there's not a future there, bringing them in for 3 years, there's no real point, right? Like, cut your losses. And and there's an asterisk that goes with that draft. Like, there was no OHL season the year before. There was abbreviated Q and JHL seasons. Yep. Like, everything was different, right? So, so I think that was, and also when it comes to Conroy, this is not Conroy deciding on that day. Like, this is stuff that's been probably well known anyway, right?
Oh,
like, an organization decision, right? So, excuse me. Yeah.
The rumor on the street, Jack's got the thing from Elliot. Elliot kind of got everybody's attention last night. You were at McMahon Stadium, but the rest of the world all of a sudden, stood straight up, that Ryan Huska is the inside choice, the lead dog, whatever you want to say. He's not hired yet, and he wasn't saying he was going to be hired. He just inside track. So thoughts on that? Thoughts on, on Huska versus, it feels like, and you have a better pulse on this than I do. Feels like it's Huska versus Love.
Yeah, it does feel like it'll be an internal first time he hire. I mean, I think at some point the fact that they're already invested that $4 million plus in the old guy, that's going to impact. It's going to impact the budget. I think we're kidding ourselves if we say it's not, right.
Yeah, it has to.
But I don't think it's I think you're doing a huge injustice to just say that's why Ryan Huska would be hired. 21 years he's been coaching, has not had an NHL head coach job, and he's on a path that is supposed to take you directly to that. Assistant coach in the WHL, head coach in the WHL, assistant or head coach in the AHL, now assistant coach in the NHL, right? So he has been like, this is a guy that this is the opportunity he's been waiting for, and it's very similar to Conroy, to be honest, right?
It's very similar, yeah,
very similar. So news of that, I don't think it should be a surprise. I think the internal candidates were always going to be right up there in the running. I think for a guy like Craig Conroy, who knows Huska very well, they've been in the same organization for 9 years since Huska arrived, that it would be really tough for him to not lean towards a guy that he knows and knows really well and has had success, right? And when I say has success, I've had a couple of people today say, well, look at his win-loss record. I would say go and read anything I've ever written about the AHL, talking to management, talking to the coach. They have a priority in the AHL, and it's not how many wins do they have at the end of the season. It's how many guys they can ultimately get to NHL quality so they can either be in the Flames lineup, can be traded as an asset, or used as an asset to bring in something else that they need or whatever, right? And there's a lot of names on that list. If his 4 years in the AHL, there's the obvious ones: Shillington, Mangiapane, Anderson, but then Garnet Hathaway, Ryan Lomberg is still playing hockey right now.
He was Backlund's junior coach. He was Backlund's junior coach.
Yeah. So he's helped get a bunch of guys to the NHL, and I think from a different, you talk about they need a new voice or a different voice. They need different energy. This guy is the complete opposite of the last guy in terms of his demeanor, his communication. I've really enjoyed always my dealings with Ryan Huska. Is very, very thoughtful, very, very, he's a great communicator. And, I think when you have someone like that, that's right under your nose, you certainly have to give him a really long look, because otherwise he's going to be coaching somewhere else, and he might be just like some of the players that sometimes get away. He might be the coach that got away.
And Jack just threw up Mitch Love. Like, Mitch Love's this is a rapid riser. Like, this is John Cooper, right? John Cooper went really quickly from the USHL into the American Hockey League into the NHL, I believe, anyway. But you look at it, 3 years as a head coach in Saskatoon. One of those years was in the bubble, right? And then, 1 or 2 years in the American Hockey League. All he did was win AHL Coach of the Year. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just saying he's the shiny toy now. But it wasn't that long ago when Huska was the shiny toy, right? And I don't ever remember that. You're much better at the history of this club than I do not ever remember the Flames having this situation with internal candidates. They had Jim Playfair, but I don't think Rich Preston was really at that point in Rich Preston's career. I don't think he was threatening to be a head coach. And he kind of had that run in the Western League sort of thing. So Jimmy Playfair, you had one. I'm trying to think, outside of that, they don't really tend to go or haven't gone internally that often. But this is kind of a unique place for this organization to have two viable candidates internally, not cheap candidates, viable candidates.
Yeah, no, and if it wasn't for Ryan Huska being right there under their nose, I think Mitch Love is a great candidate.
Why is Cale McLean not in this conversation?
Just shorter resumes all around, right? Shorter in the NHL, shorter, but
I like
fair.
him a lot.
It's a fair question. Yeah, it's a fair question.
So you could make you could make the case they actually have three viable, because if you interviewed Cale McLean for the head coaching job, nobody would look at. If you interviewed me for the head coaching job, they'd want your head on a stick, right? Like you would be, you would get serious attention from medical professionals. But if you brought in Cale McLean, nobody would bat an eye. So you really have three viable candidates. And I suppose if you want to put I'm blank. Kirk Muller in there, you have four.
Yeah. Is there room, do you think, to do both? Could you bring in Huska as head coach and promote Mitch Love? I don't know if he wants that. Mitch Love may be on more of a head coach trajectory, and maybe not. But I'm just wondering if that might be a scenario that they would entertain, whether it's this year or next year.
Work for Huska.
Yeah.
Well, we think it's going to work for Huska. I shouldn't say,
Yeah.
but to me, he and maybe it's just in my mind. Mitch Love feels more like John Cooper, right? Like he's the it kid, like he's the it. Spencer Carberry was the it guy when he was in Hershey, right? And but he became an assistant. It was either Craig Button or Eric DeHatchuk was saying that don't underestimate the value of going to the American Hockey or the NHL as an assistant just to see what the NHL experience is.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, no, for sure. The other thing I think that's interesting with Huska, and where he brings a lot of experience, and when I say this, I don't mean things that he's going to emulate all these guys, but think of all the coaches in Calgary that he's worked with, either beside or closely with while he was still in Adirondack or Stockton, right? You go back to Bob Hartley, then you have Glenn Gulletson, then you've got most recently Daryl Sutter, Bill Peter. Like there's an assortment of people there, different styles, different ways of coaching, different ways of HR managing your employees or your players, right? Like he will have seen a lot of what's worked, what hasn't worked, and I think you bring a lot of, when you have your eyes open and you have an opportunity to see others do their thing and see, and sometimes when you're in the middle of doing your thing, you can't see, but it's a little easier for someone else to see what's working and what's not. I think as a guy that strikes me as very sharp, very shrewd, that I think there's a lot of learnings he's probably picked up, good to know kind of things that he's picked up over the time, and to be able to get an opportunity to kind of apply those. I would be fascinated to see that. So that's you certainly have to stay close on that one and see where this one leads.
And again, this is all speculation at this point based on Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet's reporting, and very respectful of the work that Elliot does. He does not miss on a lot. Let me play devil's advocate on two things with you. And,
Sure.
And Peter Marr brought it up, I believe, last week. Can you go from being the good cop to being the bad cop? And I know that's such a cliche, and it's shades of gray. It's not black and white like that. But, Jimmy Playfair, I still think Jimmy Playfair is one of the most effective assistant coaches I've ever seen. The work that he did with that blue line in 2004, considering what it was composed of. Yet when he went to head coach, he really seemed to struggle. Now, different in the sense that the guy that Huska's replacing is not still in the organization, and I think that hurt Jimmy.
Yeah.
But is there any concern of especially with what is common knowledge now? This was a divided dressing room.
Yeah.
Right? This was one side versus the other side. Can you be a guy that was in that and fix that?
Yeah, no, you don't know for sure. No one. If I was to say here that for sure that won't happen, I'm lying, because you don't know. There's an element of don't know there. Absolutely, there is, and it's no different than in our every walk of life, right? Whether you're the guy who was a great salesperson who became the sales manager, and now you had to boss around the guys that you used to go out drinking with every Friday night. Like, can you do that? Can you separate, right? So there's a into being now the person. So yeah, and oh man, I'm just speculating, but I'm pretty sure that good cop hat, he probably went through 3 or 4 of those hats last year, just trying to keep things just keep the lines open, right? So I imagine that so that for sure, that's going to be a caveat. That's going to be one of those unknowns. I don't know. You can't say he won't be able to handle that, and you can't say he will be able to handle that. That would just have to remain something that is a wait and see. But for me, when I think about him as a person and just how he's wired, I just feel like he's such a even keel, very methodical kind of like communicator that I feel like there's a way to kind of get people on board for him to really be candid with those saying, look, I'm going to need, what I mean? Like, I think that will help him in making that jump. Right.
Yeah.
But I can't, certainly that's a fair thing to wonder about.
So completing this circle, if Elias Lindholm is not here in 2 years, does that mean that Craig Conroy failed to get the coach that he wanted?
Lindholm wanted?
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just the way this whole summer's gone, right? Like, Craig Conroy says he wants he's prioritized Lindholm. Lindholm's said he's, gonna. To me, I don't think you can base, and I'll argue my own point. I don't think you can ever base. I got frustrated when I heard, they ought to hire Brunette because Huberdeau played really well for him. That's
overplayed. That's
right?
An overplayed hand. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, oh my God, let's bring in. Yeah, no, at some point. Yeah, I'm with you there. No, there are going to be, like there's opportunity for whoever the head coach is there, I think, to fresh start. I think fresh starts, I would suspect that Jonathan Huberdeau is willing to, is looking forward to a fresh start. And I don't think you need to be a Jonathan Huberdeau apologist or promoter or his agent to be able to coach him, right? Like, I think there's
isn't that the title of his agent, apologist and promoter?
I suppose so, but he's not getting the job of head coach, I don't think. But we'll see what Alan.
That's true. If you really wanted to appease him, you should have made Alan Walsh the head coach, right? And all kidding aside, I feel bad. I don't even know Jonathan Huberdeau, and I've had a lot of conversation at the expense of his agent, just because I just didn't, and you've covered this team even longer than I have. This was such a strange season for things becoming public and stuff like that. That just, not to say it never happened. I'm not saying that, but some of it that saw the light of day, it was weird.
Yeah, but it does speak to the growing power of the player. There's more influence there, and you can hate it and you can fight it, but the reality is, it's reality. What a terrible quote, but that is, that's the world we live in now, and these guys have a seat at that table because they make a ton of money.
I'm glad you brought that. By the way, Cracker Jack Ace producer Jack has just come up with this. How about this one?
Okay.
Huska was assistant coach on the 2012 U20 team with Jonathan Huberdeau. So maybe he did get the coach he wanted. Right?
So Huberdeau would have been, what's that, 18-year-old Jonathan Huberdeau?
Okay. So Jack just never stops. He just never, ever stops. You bring up a really interesting point, and I actually had it written down here. So you're talking about the modern player, right?
Yeah.
Rick Bell, not to be confused with Rick Ball. Rick Bell wrote a very interesting article in Post Media about the players being snowflakes. You are a social media maven. You're all over it. You would have seen there's no shortage of people who had Darryl's back, right? Yeah. That this is a young player. We had Anthony Cox in here last week, 25-year season ticket holder, lawyer, and he was the first guy that ever really wrote out his intro, which was fantastic. He really made it easy on me. But he was talking about it from a fan's perspective, and he got right to the cusp of saying, it's a bunch of woke young players. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about wokeness or morality or young players or whatever. I think that's a really important conversation to have. I like Daryl Sutter. I consider Daryl Sutter a friend. I don't know if he considers me a friend, but I consider him a friend. And I've seen him doing amazing things in this community. I certainly didn't endorse the fact that he didn't have a captain. I didn't like some of that stuff. And I also know that he can be hard on players. He's a hard ass coach. And it's really brought up, with Mike Babcock now potentially going back to Columbus, it to me has really brought up this interesting conversation about, okay, hard ass, players coach, wokeness, old time, all of this stuff. Where, mental health comes into this, right? We were never concerned about mental health of players 5 years ago, but now it's, we have to be legitimately, and we have to be of the staff and everything. Was that part of this, Darren? Do you think, was it part of a clash of ages, generations? Was this a generational clash this year?
Well, I think I think there is. I think you would be you're blind if you're not saying, if you're not, the game and the players have changed. The world has changed, right? Like what's okay and what's not okay has changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's fair to say that while he may have evolved some of his maybe approach to style of play and whatnot, I think there was probably a lot of coaching how I've always coached that we saw out of Daryl Sutter, and that maybe didn't follow that same evolution. So, I think there is. So I think that's completely fair to say. And, and there's going to be, where is some of that grumbling coming from? It's probably coming from people our age or older that have that attitude or have seen that, and that's who they are because that's what we know, right? That's how we were raised or whatever, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, no, I think that's completely. I think that's I think that's I think that's a fair way to describe what's probably happened and why you do need to be cognizant of that, in that next hire, and knowing that, like you do need to. And it's not just the managing of personalities; it's also the approach to, I think Don Maloney or Conroy, one of them mentioned how you also need to play younger players now. You also need to insert those guys into your line because, there was a time, I always point to the Grand Rapids. They had some amazing teams where future Detroit Red Wings were down there for 3 or 4 full seasons, and then the Red Wings were really successful. That's not this time anymore. The salary cap won't allow that. You need those players to be in the NHL quicker. You need young in your lineup, so you need it. You need it from a cap perspective, but they're also more skilled than they used to be, so they can be in the NHL sooner because this is a different player. Like, it's crazy how much. And this is, like you think about, like I know some guys that are hardcore about their kids' hockey development, and it is skills camp, skating camp. It's all these things all summer. Like, we're building a better hockey player at a younger age now. And so you have to accept that, right? So there's so much of the game has changed, whether it's the players, whether it's the attitudes, whether it's the whole surroundings. And I think that, the coach that's overseeing this has to be cognizant of all that stuff, right? Like,
well, I think on your first visit with us, we talked about, Matt Phillips was, for me, that was the failing. And not that Matt Phillips is the savior, and Matt Phillips may never play in the NHL full time, but he never got the shot. And Daryl, just to your point about Grand Rapids and Detroit, he is from that ilk of, your first year as a pro, you're in the American Hockey League. The second year as a pro, you get a taste of the NHL. The third year as a pro, you finally, in the middle of the year, you go up and you don't come back, right? David Moss, Eric Nystrom. Those are the two examples I would give, right? In the American League, in the American, and the up, down, and now they're in. You can't do that anymore. Pelche should not have sat for 6 games. Pelche should not have sat at the end of the year. Sorry, you're fighting for your playoff lives. Oh, okay, well, you had me up until you put Nick Ritchie in the shootout.
Yeah.
Right? Which was it? You were fighting for your playoff lives, or you're trying to prove a point? And I just think it was that dysfunctional towards the end. It just felt dysfunctional, right? Yeah. So, no, I'm fascinated by that conversation because I think there are people who go, no, the players aren't tough. Brent Cron was in here a couple days ago, and he wasn't going to cut any slack to the players. Whereas I think my anxiety would have gotten to me if it was going in that dressing room every day and you're living on pins and needles. Don't you think your anxiety would have got to you? Don't you think it would have had an adverse effect on your mental health? If we're being honest.
Yeah, and you could feel that. You could feel that, like, nobody likes going to work, wherever that is. That could be Dairy Queen, that could be downtown Calgary. Nobody likes to go to work and hate going to work, right? Like, that's hard. That's really hard on your
That's why I feel bad
health.
for Jack, our producer.
But you know what I mean? So that's the reality. And so they address that, and like, they need to start having fun. You've got to create that. That's got to be part of the workplace culture. You're going to need that. And that's not, and so just to be super clear, you know, this whole thing that we're talking about, that doesn't mean that they don't need a little bit more out of Jonathan Huberdeau. They don't need more.
No. It's not about excusing
they're not
the players.
off the hook.
No.
Right. So just, you know, we're not saying that, but you know, but so yeah, do they need to step up their game and bring a little bit more to the table, and maybe, you know, like, maybe it's not perfect, but you got to make the most of it. Yeah, for sure. But I think there's definitely give on both sides.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that's a good point. But I would say that this was such an underwhelming season that I believe there is, you know, redemption on the other side. You know, I think that Jonathan Huberdeau is a 60-point player? No, I don't. Do I think that Jonathan Huberdeau likely needs to be handled differently? Yes, I do. Sorry, that's how I do. Nazem Kadri, he was your all-star. Sorry, I'm not going to pick on him. I just look at a handful of players and I go, was it coming to work every day? And you might not even have been the target, but your buddy might have been the target. Or it just, you don't like tension. Like, sorry, that's a reality of this situation. So now it's up to Huska, who was your point earlier, was in this. Now he's got to come up with the formula to do both of the things, bring everybody back onto the same page, but hold Huberdeau and some of these other guys accountable for soft years or bad years.
Yeah, and right? You got to find and play to their strengths, right? Like, a lot of this season and usage, I went back to an example. To me, it's a shining example. You know, there's a lot of people maybe too young to remember it, but Greg Gilbert and Mark Savard.
Yep.
And Mark Savard would get a chance to center Jerome McGinley, and the magic was there. But then Greg Gilbert was never satisfied with his defensive game. We got to so he's going to put him down on the line. He's going to put him on the fourth line. He's going to always grinding at Savard to be a better defensive player. And Savard was what he was. He was a guy, so set him up to be what he could be. It's not to give him a free pass defensively, but at least set him up to be. And so he was never content with that. Always tried to turn him into something he wasn't. Right. And then they ended up having to move him for, you know who, the great Russian.
Yeah. Taratukin.
No, for Zanula. Oh my God. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Who was
Ruslan. Ruslan.
Zanulin, right? Ruslan
Zanulin. Who is still on the for the longest. I'm not sure about this year, but for the longest time, for sure, up until last year, was still on the list of.
Oh yeah, that the big giant list. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. That is right. I know exactly what you're talking about. To that end, though, I guess, and a name that we haven't brought up, and we should talk a little bit about his new job. I love Brad Treliving. I think the human being and the person, I've got so much to thank him for, and he was so nice to me and great and helped me and stuff like that. And as a general manager, I think he did the best he could under the circumstances. He did not hire this last coach. He worked for an owner that won't allow you to say rebuild and things like that. So you have certain, parameters to the job, curbs to the job. But the one thing, if I am critical of Brad Treliving is I always felt like, and I, I could be completely proven wrong and you may disagree. I always thought he gave too much power on player decisions to his coaches. I go back to Bob Hartley, didn't like Sven Berchi, so they got rid of Sven Berchi. Well, a month later, they're going, we have no skill on the wing. Yeah, well, you just traded it, right? Now, but he's this, he's that. injuries and all that, we don't know what would happen. But I didn't like that. I thought Bob Hartley made that decision. I think, we saw it, especially with Darryl this year, that, it was his show. I just always felt like Brad was he always allowed the coach maybe too much leeway on player decisions. I would hope that that's something that Craig won't do, that Craig will, stand a little firmer, be a little bit more, from his perch with Huska, go, no, we're going to see this through. We're going to give Dustin Wolf 10 games here, not, 10 starts over 3 months or whatever. I never liked the fact that it seemed like the coach had way too much power on player decisions.
Yeah, but to your point earlier of who maybe hired that coach, like, are you also, up against not just the coach on some of this stuff? If the coach has got the backing, you know what I mean? Like, it felt like you're in a pretty tough spot.
Yeah, this year for sure. But that's why I brought up the example with Hartley. That one really still sticks in my craw. Bob didn't like Sven. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't like Sven. They both were over in the Swiss League at the same time, or he was in Switzerland at the same time. Whatever reason, Bob Hartley didn't like Sven Berchi. And then they got rid of Berchi. And maybe it came to a head this year with Matt Phillips and some other decisions. Certainly they're going to have to decide on a goaltending. I think Dan Vladar is a great guy, and I think he's capable of maybe being a 1 or 1A, but I just don't see him here in the fall. I don't think they have a choice. I think they have to open up a space for Wolf, don't they?
Yeah. So you need, and Conroy, I thought, was very candid about this.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so candid that it didn't leave much to the imagination in terms of what he didn't see last year. And that is cohesion between the manager and the coach.
Yeah.
Like he wants that to be, that's like a joint, like they're on board, everything,
like
signings, recalls, he wants to be connected. They need to have the same, like, that's where you get dysfunction, is when the guy bringing in the players has this vision and sees this, and the coach is on a completely different page. Like, then you get these weird things where Phillips comes up and they can't get in the lineup. Well, why did they bring him up, right? Like, you start connecting the dots on what was going on behind the scenes, and I don't think we were that far off, right?
No.
So Conroy needs to bring in a coach that sees things the same way, and they need to work together. And you put a do not disturb on Murray Edwards' door or whatever, but they need to get together, and they need to. Yeah.
I'm not going to defend Murray, but I won't. I mean, I've met him a couple of times. He's the reason there's a team in Calgary. Let's not forget that. It's his team. But he's like, let's talk about Bill Foley in Vegas, shall we? Let's talk about, Brad Treliving jumps from here. Oh, he wanted to get away from Murray Edwards. Did he? Now he's a, MLSE and he's running the Shanna plan. That's, what's his name in Vancouver? What's his name up in Edmonton? That's the reality of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Murray Edwards puts his skin in the game. He gets to make his decisions. I don't have to agree with him. You don't have to agree with him. The general manager doesn't have to agree with him. Guess what? He's the ultimate say in all of this. And I part of me, wanted to build this narrative of this crazy owner who, is going to put his coach out there in front of the, screw you. Nope. He listened to what Don Maloney had to say. He listened to, and Don Maloney probably listened to potential candidates and what they had to say. And they made the decision that they made. Right.
Yeah.
So it's part of the job description now.
Yeah.
You saw the Damon Severson trade today, right? In Columbus.
Yeah. Just a little.
Doesn't that feel like the Flames? We could rebuild, but you know what? Instead, let's go out and 2 big defensemen this week. They give up a 3rd overall pick. That's not much, but they've got Damon Severson tied up for 8 years. They got Provorov earlier in the week. They got Werenski. They've got Johnny Gaudreau. They've got, so they're going to get the 3rd overall pick, but that's not a rebuild anymore, right? Doesn't that feel very Calgary-ish?
Yeah, that's
The only difference is they're not the find away jackets, but it's the same, right?
Yeah, I mean, when it was the same way here. You go back to the Hamonic trade when they traded for Hamonic, right? Like they felt that they were a piece away. Now I don't know. That's pretty grandiose of Columbus to think they're a piece away, but
well, I don't think Columbus thinks they're a piece away. I just think Columbus thinks that they're not going to go through 4 or 5 years of rebuild. Right?
No. But as they keep adding pieces, and hey, there's going to be that thinking. I think we're doing an enormous disservice. I get that Florida snuck in this year. I get that Florida was a point behind Calgary. I get all that. I tweet about that. It's kind of fun. I think it's kind of fun. But they also won the President's Trophy last year. I think this is a team that underachieved most of the season.
Oh, I think they were the Calgary of the East.
Yeah. So now they're in. So as much as the Florida getting in is going to really galvanize the just get in people, and some of those people will be in NHL management and NHL ownership. I don't think that's necessarily the accurate portrayal of Florida. I think there's more there than
do you think there's
then
more?
Matthew Tkachuk is talking about, like we are the super underdog. Like he is playing that card up so hard that it's us against the world. We're the super underdog. It's like, come on, just pump the brakes.
Yeah, but you and I were talking about the CFL early. That was, remember Coach Riley in Winnipeg, right? He'd have those really good Winnipeg teams that beat the crap out of the East, and then nobody likes us, everybody hates us. Right. That was just, it grinds on you after a while. Like, please, you've been the top team for 9 years in a row. Screw off. So are you alluding to the fact that you think Calgary's, and to me, Calgary underachieved this year. Markstrom underachieved. There's a lot of guys that underachieved. Yes, I know they don't have the superstars anymore. I get that. But the superstars that they got underachieved. I think this team should come into camp with high expectations and needs to be held to those high expectations.
Sure.
They should be a playoff team.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I mean, we're also sitting here in June.
But this is when you make the boldest predictions.
But yeah, no, I think I see, and to be honest, that's a bit of a journey as a Calgary Flames fan. The overachieving, then the underachieving. The overachieving, then the underachieving.
Oh no, you're so is your solution they underachieve again this year? just to throw a monkey wrench into the formula, change it up. Oh, this is so much better. They're bad again. No, but and I've said this about this organization. They're safe. They're in the middle. They're always in the middle. Right? They're safe. Yeah, they could be a playoff team. But they might miss. They could be a playoff. You know what we ought to do? We ought to put pictures of our players all coming into the rink. That's cool. Yeah, but Gritty. Look at Gritty. Look at what Gritty's doing. Like, take a risk every once in a while. And to me, I hope Craig, and again, go back to ownership if they'll allow it, but be a little risk adverse here.
Couldn't you say the last GM took some risks? Swung that bat is the phrase he used to use.
He swung that bat. What I'd like to know, and again, I go back to that Mike Russo article in The Athletic, the Zucker trade.
Yeah.
That scares me. Is that the only one in 9 years that happened that way? Or are there other things that got kiboshed? I think last summer they I think there was 4 days or 3 days between Tkachuk and Gaudreau leaving where I think everybody thought this thing was just going to run itself into the ground. Nobody buy a ticket ever again. It'd be 0 people in the building just because it just felt so bad. And then he went out and he hit this freaking home run. Not only did he hit a home run, these guys are better than those guys. This is a better team and all of that, right? And they needed that. They desperately needed that. And even just from a business standpoint, to sell tickets, to sell suites, to sell all that stuff, it would have been a mausoleum if the Flames didn't do anything last summer. So yes, I think he did. I think he is a riverboat gambler, but I think you got to take some risks. Your you have to have a captain this year. That's not a risk, by the way, but it might be a risk if you're going to
coach. That's a coach thing, is it not? That's not a GM thing. That's a coach.
No. But surely to God, the GM said, shouldn't we have a captain? right?
But
Like,
you think that I don't know if that coach is listening to much.
no, I don't. I think that this past year was clear. He was not
Yeah.
listening to much. I think that's why the GM at the end of the year said, "Okay, thank you very much. I'm leaving." He wasn't fired. Like, let's not forget that Brad Treliving was not fired.
Yeah.
He left on his own accord.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the decision was made to move on from the coach. And God bless the coach. He's got 2 Stanley Cups. You and I combine our Stanley Cups, and we don't have 2. Right? Yeah. Yes, I'm glad you stopped and did the mental math on that. I just want to make sure that is actually correct. No, and Darryl Sutter a Hall of Famer as a coach?
Yep.
I think so. And I just think it was the end of the road. That's all. Mike Keenan, when we saw Mike Keenan, and I think Darryl Sutter's a better coach than Mike Keenan, and that may be an unpopular opinion, but I think he was. And I think he was even a more effective coach still, even to this day, knowing what happened than Mike Keenan was in his 2 years in Calgary. I think that was a joke, a sham. It should have never happened. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's different eras, things evolve, and it doesn't make a coach that was great in one era a terrible coach just because he couldn't transition or didn't transition as well in a new era.
Yep. Before I let you go, you've been very kind with your time today. I mentioned his name. Thoughts on Brad Treliving taking over the Snake Pit in Toronto? I like Brad. I don't know how I feel about this.
I think he'll, he's going to have some fun with it. Like I think, it's a good challenge. It's a huge challenge, obviously. I think he's got the good demeanor for it. I think it's going to be, it's always nice to go in to a market where they haven't had success, that allows you an opportunity to you don't want to be the guy that comes in after they won the Stanley Cup, right? Like that's tough. So there's opportunity there. No, I'm fascinated to see how it plays out. There's going to be perhaps different governors, different pressures, there'll be hotter burners in different places. It's not going to be easy. He's got some decisions to make with that lineup. But I'm fascinated to see him play out. I'm glad that it worked out for him to, I'm glad it worked out for him to get another gig and to keep going. Like this is a guy that I think, I just look at his and yeah, there was mistakes. He'll be the first guy to say he made mistakes. 100%.
It was his first job as a general manager.
But you look at a guy who's methodical, who came in 2014, looked at what they were doing, and think about the amateur draft and the setup of the scouting department, and said, after observing, taking it all in, said, this is what we need to do. We need to have more scouts. We need to have more scouts overseas. We need a bigger department. We need a data department, and he put those things in place and they produced results, right? Like that's the kind of, like, this is, so that's, he did good things in the city. I think he'll get remembered for some of the mistakes by some, but I think he's earned a big opportunity like this. And I'm, and sometimes you just need a new start. You need a fresh start. The market needs a new start. And I think the person, the human, sometimes needs a fresh start too, right? And that he's getting that, Calgary's getting it, and Toronto's getting it. So we'll see how it all plays out. And can I hop down again in December, January?
Yes.
We'll see how it's going.
Yes, you can. We'll book you now. As a matter of fact, stay on the line. Jack will talk to you. We'll get a time book now. It's like a dentist now. Hey, we're booking 6 months in advance. Wow. Right? You got to come in for your cleaning. When are you free at 8:00 on December 24th? I don't know. Okay,
sure.
Hey, listen, thanks for that. You got anything you want to plug? Anything you want to promote?
No, not really.
No, I don't. I'm gonna have a garage sale this weekend, but that's okay.
No, I don't have anything to promote. No, I will just say that, speaking of Ryan Huska, I was in Kamloops for the first time last week. I went to some Memorial Cup games, and I don't know if you've ever been to the lovely area of Kamloops. It was the first time for me, and a lot of history with that team. Obviously, connections into the local heroes here, of course.
Yes.
And so that was fun. But no,
did you run into Jerome?
I did not. He was there. His son was on the roster but not playing for Seattle, and has since been traded.
Yeah.
But no, I did not. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see that a lot of kind of tributes to kind of the Mark Reckies and kind of the Dean Evison. Some of the they got the good players come through there. So not so much a plug as it just an acknowledgement to all the listeners in Kamloops. I had a great time.
Okay. Well, we always like a good acknowledgement. Thank you, sir. This was fun. I appreciate your time today.
All right. Take care, Robbie.
There you go, buddy. Darren Haynes, everybody, from Canadian Press. Also, as he told you, he's a stats guy for the Stampeders. So some interesting CFL talk and little hockey talk. Of course, brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 76 years in Calgary. Current location, just one in the summer, guys. McLeod Trail by Chinook Center. Well, by now you've made plans for tomorrow, have you not? UFC 289 in Vancouver on pay-per-view. Amanda Nunes. Get out, watch a legend in the making. Not saying she's done, she's not done, but it's, not going to be many more. I mean, exactly how long is a fighter's career, right? First time in 4 years that UFC has been back to Canada. It is Nunes versus Aldana. Six, count them, 6 Canadians on the undercard. Really good co-main event. But most importantly, it's back. It's exciting. It's everything everybody wants it to be. So whether you watch it on pay-per-view or whether or not you check it out at your favorite watering hole that supports the UFC, make sure you check out UFC 289 Nunes, Aldana, Vancouver's Rogers Arena tomorrow on pay-per-view. All right, time for the final mile. How about this? This here little show. Big week for this here little show. First, congratulations to Cami Kepke. Cami Kepke. You know her. She comes on. She co-hosts the program every once in a while. She's a great guest. She is the recipient of the Fred Gus Collins Award for her work covering the Canada West and student athletes. We congratulate Cami. I'm so proud of her. She did lay out the challenge that perhaps she could find time on this program to do segments highlighting these athletes in these sports. Challenge accepted. We are talking. We will continue to talk. We hope to take her up on that. Congratulations to Danny Austin. We talked about it all afternoon, but it's one thing now. It's a real thing. Live from 55. One episode out. There'll be a new episode on Monday, which will take a look around the CFL. But you heard it from Darren, and to me, it was the response that he got on the web, on social, from people who are really excited. Danny's going to crush this. Danny's going to kill this. And Danny, of course, will be hosting this program a couple times next week. So just wanted to congratulate him. So one begs the question, now when does Jack get his big break? I don't know, but it's coming soon. It's coming soon. I mentioned All Sport One Day, which is coming soon here in Calgary. I believe not this week, the following weekend. So if you know about All Sport One Day, great opportunity, kids. 7 to 17 to try a new sport, completely free. Try a couple of new sports, but we need some volunteers. We are all over the city, 70 plus sports. My understanding is as of yesterday, there was over 3,500 kids already registered. So we need some help in the different venues. Again, all over. If you can volunteer next Saturday, you want to head on over to Sport Calgary's website, find the volunteer sign up, and 1 hour, 2 hours all day, whatever you need. You get a t-shirt and a gift card, but you'll be able to help kids find a new sport. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. So as we leave you here on this Friday, we remind you that the Calgary Surge are in action tonight against the Ottawa Blackjacks, both teams 3-1, 7 o'clock up at Winsport. Monday and Wednesday next week is supposed to be Danny Austin. Now, in the event that the Flames hold a press conference to announce a coach, that may switch and I may have to come back in and do my own job. But anyway, and then a week from today, Peter Marr and Eric Dehacek on the same show. Thanks to our incredible producer, Jack, who had just had a stellar week. I enjoyed our shows this week. I really did.
Really good.
They weren't, were they?
Mm.
Yeah, they were. Not all. I mean, that doesn't always happen, Jack. We don't say that because we're trying. Really, sometimes they just aren't good. But this week they were good.
Mm.
Yeah. So for Jack and for me, have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
When there's two sides to every coin, then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks, and some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man